screwed financially. Other than having 3 kids of my own that are in their 20s, I don't think I could speak on this. So what I have today is, the name will give it away, my friend, Millennial Mike, who is younger than me, who owns, I think, more rental units than I do.
Not quite, 15.
15? Okay, well, I would say more than the average person. 15 rental units, you're a millennial, are millennials screwed? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk on this subject. This is, are young people screwed? What should a young person do if they're just starting out now? Mm-hmm. So here's some statistics for you first, before you give the idea of what should a young person do now. And of course, I'm dragging out the intro a little so that people get the notification that a live stream went out. Last year, 2022, the largest group of home buyers was millennials at 43%, up from 37% the year before. Large institutional buyers represented 1.6% of home purchases. I'm not sure which one you think had a bigger impact on the market, millennials or the industrial complex. Just last month, the percentage of millennials that own homes passed the 50% mark. 51% of millennials are homeowners. And so millennials, yes, young, might not be as screwed as people think, but what about Gen Z? Are things rough for them too? At no point in time has anybody had the access to YouTube University to any generation at the level that exists now. That's why this statistic doesn't actually shock me. At the age of 25, so 25-year-olds, the percentage of the generation that owned the most homes at the age of 25 was baby boomers. This happened in the 70s when we started having the first 30-year mortgages, which had a better opportunity for people to buy houses than at almost any point in time. And you had the start of the 2-income household. Since then, the next generation that has the most homes purchased at the age of 25 of all of the current generations, other than baby boomers, is Gen Z. They have more home ownership at 25 than both millennials and Gen X did at the age of 25. So whenever you hear the woe is me victim mentality of people spouting off of how hard it is, it's never been easy. Every single year since I've been born, everyone has had a reason why this year, that year that they're talking, is the wrong year to buy. It's no different now. So the purpose of this video is, are young people screwed? My answer, yes, just as screwed as older people. Millennial Mike, thanks for giving me a second to do the opening there. What should a younger person do if they're starting out today?
Good question. And I think the first thing we have to recognize is kind of what you were saying in there, which is that the youngest millennials are now 27, 28. It's Gen Z that are the 25-year-olds. You know, you said, a 25-year-old today, there are no 25-year-old millennials today. They're all Gen Z. And Gen Z is doing a fantastic job of buying real estate. I think it's not quite the most fair comparison because as millennials were coming into the age of around 25, well, that was right during the Great Recession, like literally right during the Great Recession, the biggest housing crash we've ever had. It was when millennials were in their 20s. I was myself in 2008. I was 17, but I'm a mid-millennial. Anyways, what can young people do to get started today? Well, you mentioned YouTube. YouTube, when it first got invented, when I was like 16, was not what it was today. It was mostly a place for people to share music and to make little comedy skits. And every now and then I go back and watch some of those old popular videos from 15 years ago. If anybody remembers that shoes video or the muffin video, yeah, there's some funny ones back in the day. Anyways, but now it's morphed into this place where you can learn how to do anything. You could learn how to change a transmission on your car. You could learn how to invest in real estate. You could learn how to do cryptocurrency. I've learned how to build things in my house. How to parent your child. You can find anything, how to do anything on YouTube. And it took a while for it to get to that point, but Now people just have access to information that I would say was not available before. So even though there's things that are pulling young people back today, like unbelievably high prices, very, very 20, 30-year high interest rates, unbelievably uncharacteristically low supply of houses. These three things working in unison at the same time are creating a housing market that makes it seem almost impossible for your average young or old person to crack into the housing market or buy their first rental property. And I get this question asked to me all the time. But there are things that offset it, like YouTube University. It didn't exist before. You can get information quicker, faster, more reliable. But with that also comes more downsides, because there's snake oil salesmen out there trying to lie to you, trying to take advantage of you. So the landscape has changed from what it was when I was 25 and what it was when you were 25. But like you said, it's hard for everybody at any point in time. But there are also unique advantages for people at any point in time.
It's those advantages that I think people don't pay attention to.
Or forget.
It's so easy to go, where's the fear point? Let me click on that. Let me watch the crash video. Let me see the next reason why I have a justifiable sense that I don't need to take action. I don't think it's too late. I think one of the issues that we have is the next 10 years are going to happen, right? The people saying it's too late, it's too hard. The first comment here from buddies: interest rates are high, home prices are high, make it difficult for young people to buy homes, especially when their salaries tend to be lower as they just getting started with careers.
He's correct.
So in the 80s and 90s, you were told in 2000s, if you didn't go to college, your life was pointless. 100% of high school was dedicated on getting you to apply to college. That's actually how high schools get their funding. The more students that apply to go to college, not graduate college, but apply to go to college, determines how much funding a high school gets. In the last 10 years, we're finally hearing studies being done that show that going to college does not equate to making more money. There are some industries where the college degree means you can make more money, but most people aren't finishing med school, becoming a doctor, becoming a dentist, becoming an attorney. They're getting a liberal arts degree and getting a state job, then complaining for the next 10 years that they don't make enough money because of all their student loan debt. And they're trying to work a public service job so they can get their debt forgiven, instead of actually learning a skill at a college that would get you that higher income so you could pay off that debt. We're actually hearing now, look what a lineman makes. Look how much this HVAC technician is making. This local CDL driver is starting off at around $100,000 a year now. It's like 94 is the average entry level for local drivers. Instead of, you should go and rack up 4 years of debt, which is the only options that were being talked about when you were in school. They had, I was on the tail end of them still having shop classes. Like, there are still states that have it, but most of the states have gotten rid of any kind of woodwork, any kind of doing anything with your hands, because it has to be tech related, HR related, IT related. There's nothing that's going to make any money coming from school outside of that. And now we're seeing the trades can actually make you a decent income. And now you actually have people giving advice on what to do with your money. That's something that's never existed before. So what should a young person do? Find the people who have done what you want to do, whether it's financial freedom, a good income, and a solid career that's not likely to be replaced. Learn from them. Sometimes it's a YouTube channel. Sometimes it's meeting them at a local meetup in the stock investing groups or the real estate investing groups, or the things that you're trying to do to make your life better, and get around those people. It's who was I watching recently? I think it was Patrick Bet-David. He had a short video on the sacrifices people aren't willing to make. And one of the first sacrifices we need to make at the age of 18 that most people don't want to do is lose your friends. If we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time around, maybe you should change the 5 people you spend the most time around to somebody you want to actually be like. And if you're 18 and your friends are talking real estate, investing, a stock portfolio, you don't need to change your friends. But if you're 18 and your friends are doing what my friends did at 18, and you're lucky enough not to end up in jail, you should probably find that new group of friends. So I don't believe the younger generation is screwed. I think it's very easy for every generation to say that. Every generation can look back at the stronger dollar from 10 years ago and say, well, of course, this was easy for you. You could buy a house for $40,000. Right, but you made $3 an hour. Now we have remote working at a higher availability than at any point in time. And let's add this further. What would a young person do if they're only making $50,000 a year? Now, there is this thing called price anchoring. If you talk to somebody and the average person in their family makes $150,000 a year, 50,000 doesn't sound like a lot. But if you talk to almost everyone that I knew ever, we probably knew 3 people making more than $50,000 a year in our entire circle, not just our family. So 50,000 is I think a decent benchmark to look at as the price to stay, because yes, you can find that part-time entry-level type job that pays minimum wage, which is now somewhere between $12 and $18, depending on not the minimum wage that's set by the state, but the minimum wage that's set by what fast food restaurants will pay in your area. Because there are McDonald's paying $18 an hour to start that are paying you $50 if you'll show up to the interview. So if you're not making at least $18 an hour, it's because you're not willing to go work in fast food. Then there's the jobs that pay more than that because they have to compete to get the better employees away from the fast food restaurants. About 50%, so I did the math about 6 months ago, and it hasn't changed much, of all the people that I interact with and know. Now I'm going to take out people who drive trucks, because it's really hard to do a remote job driving a truck. And I ran a truck driving school, so that's an unfair, skewed metric. I'm going to take out truck drivers. But of almost everyone else I know, half the people I know work a remote job. They work from home. I just drove a car to Texas for my nephew because his wife works a remote job and can work anywhere. And he's a truck driver and he could do an in-house transfer and work anywhere in the country. Most people could find a $22 to $26 an hour remote job without a college degree, without a lot of experience. It just takes hunting until you find that job and then actually being willing to do whatever it takes to keep that job. And sometimes it's working for a company out of Malaysia. So your work schedule here is going to be 10 at night until 8 in the morning. And that's what you have to be willing to do. So if you can work a remote job and you can make 20-something dollars an hour, maybe don't live in New York or Los Angeles. You can live in California, but move up to Kern County. Go out to Fraser Park where you can buy a 2-bedroom house for $250,000 or a duplex for about the same price. If you're not making a high wage, why would you be in a high cost of living area? Oh, my family's here. You can go visit them on the weekends from 3 hours away just as easily. And I met my family, so I'm pretty happy that most of them are many states away from me. That's like my nephew says, hey, I'm moving to Texas. Can you help? And I said, yes, absolutely. What can I do? I'll pack it for you.
Leave.
I love my nephew. He's great.
Well,
go ahead.
You know, I think in all fairness, we can't just gloss over the current market conditions because, okay, yeah, great. I hear and see a lot of these videos get posted. Okay, yeah, wonderful. We really don't care, boomer, that rates were 18%. That was 30 years ago, back when houses cost $12.50 or a loaf of bread. It doesn't really make as much a difference to you as it does to us. And sure, you know, everybody is concerned about what to do today. So we do need to address the particular things that could be done today in a high interest rate, low inventory, high price environment. And, you know, Zuber sent some questions out, and his questions were for Dion and the Lumberjack and myself. He sent us questions about 3 different people and how they could get started in real estate. And the first question that he sent was, what should a young adult do today to get started investing in real estate when they have no kids, they're employed and making $50,000 a year? Well, I'll start with this one because I am the young adult. This was me a few years back. I was making $50,000 a year. I had no kids and I had a full-time job. And I'll tell you exactly what I did. What I did was say, well, $50,000 a year isn't enough. I'm going to get a second job, and then I'm going to get a third job. And when you say that to people, a lot of people out there, especially online, have this immediate gut reaction that they should only have to work 40 hours a week. And that's the maximum that they should have to work to be able to provide for themselves. That's part of the argument for the minimum wage, things like that. Well, I shouldn't have to work any more than 40 hours a week. And those hours should be paid at a certain dollar amount, a living wage, so that I can afford everything I want. And I just think it's one of the most arrogant things that you could possibly say. Because if you look back at the history of civilization, most human beings worked from sun up until sundown all day, every day, without ever taking a vacation, just to be able to survive the next 24 hours. Every single human being had to be able to grow their own food, make their own clothes, build their own shelter, build their own fire, educate their own children. You had to do it all, everything, just to be able to live to the next day. And nowadays, because of capitalism, because we have the ability to specialize in one thing, and we have created this economic system that provides so much surplus, we now have the hubris and the privilege and the ability to say, I only want to work 40 hours a week. Or there's books out there like The 4-Hour Work Week, or Dion, 2 hours a month. And it's something to aspire to, sure, but some people just think that they are born deserving of the ability to not work or work extremely little and somehow be able to provide for everything that they want and need, or the government should take care of them, or there should be universal basic income. And it's just the most arrogant thing ever. If you're young, single, healthy, and making $50,000 a year, fantastic. I remember my first part-time job. And you know what happens when you say things like that? There's a whole pile of people that jump on you in the internet and they just say, wow, look at this hustle mentality, this toxic hustle culture, this work hard mentality that's wrong. And you're part of the capitalistic problem. Whenever I leave a comment like that, people say, oh, you're just licking boots. No, I'm explaining to you exactly how you can get to be where Dion's at. If you want to only work 2 hours a month, you need to work 80 hours a week, not for the rest of your life, but for the next 10 years. All you're doing is front loading that work at the end, at the beginning. And then you do that between 20 and 30, or as Zuber said here, I think age 25 to 35, you do those 80 hours a week, you set yourself up for financial freedom, and now you get to sail away down the river of cash flow if you invested it intelligently. All right, I'll stop talking. It's your turn.
You're good. I see some great comments coming in here. We're going to go through some of them. The idea of working 40 hours a week, that work-life balance, benefits your employer, not you. And if you're only working 40 hours a week, you're building someone else's dream, not yours. What's that? If you work 9 to 5 for someone else and never work 5 to 9 for yourself, you're always going to be working for someone else. There's probably some quote like that. I see Beth here. Howdy, Beth. Good morning. You know, your daughter's in a woodworking class. It's a great class, a bit of a class on entrepreneurship as well. I love that. That's what we need more of as entrepreneurial mindset. And not so that everybody runs out and becomes an entrepreneur, but so that everyone realizes that even if you're working for a W-2 job, the entrepreneurial mindset will help you. There are people who stay at a company that doesn't compensate them well enough for their work, that doesn't see their value, but they won't change from one company to another because they were told by their parents, who existed in a generation that had the benefit of pensions, that longevity at a company will get you its own reward. And now we're seeing in the last 10 years that the people who change jobs every 2 to 3 years end up making significantly more than somebody who stays at a company for 10 or 20 years. And pensions don't exist. I mean, they can exist. There are some state, federal, local municipality jobs, as long as your company doesn't go bankrupt or go through a strike like Oak Harbor Freight Lines did in 2008 that they still haven't recovered from, your pension can go away. The idea is you're selling your life 1 hour at a time. You should be pursuing the most income. And then when you talk about people that think, you said they feel like they deserve, so there should be something like universal basic income. And Andrew Yang, the person who's ran for president, I think once at least, maybe more than that now, talks about $1,000 a month UBI. Look what stimulus did. We're going to give you a check for $600, maybe another one in a few months, or it might be a second stimmy check. 9% inflation from 2. I mean, there was extra unemployment, extended unemployment, and all the businesses could borrow money and all the EIDL stuff. But if you start throwing out $1,000 a month, yeah, you'll have $1,000 more. And everything will cost more than $1,000 a month than it does now. Versus you have a competitive society where if you can actually provide value, you can actually be compensated for it. And then if you're smart, there was I think it was T. Adams here that said, then there's people who choose what they do with their money. It's their choice. You can choose to have the brand new phone. You could choose to have a car payment with full coverage insurance payment because your lender requires it at 27% interest because you didn't want to save a down payment, or you didn't get your credit score good enough to go to a car lot to buy. You had to go to one of the car lots that is using predatory lending to get people to buy cars they shouldn't own. You make all of these choices over time. So that's kind of my answer. What should the younger person now do is look at the choices they're making. I did a live stream yesterday on the chronology of time for reaching financial freedom. And I broke it down, the 10 years that it took me versus the 10 years now, because this is what a lot of people haven't thought. If you think financial freedom is possible in 10 years, that means you're thinking 2034. Most people that think, oh, I found YouTube and there's this thing called financial freedom. I'm going to fire by well, New Year's is a month away. Hopefully I can pull it off by then. Like, that's the idea. Is I want it now, because you're watching a lot of people like Matt, Lumberjack Landlord, and Zuber, who reached financial freedom. Right as I started making my YouTube channel, I had reached financial freedom, and then I retired last year. You started your channel and said, look, I'm broke. I don't have anything. I'm a cop. I'm a single parent. Here's the journey. Every video since then, up to 15 rentals now. And I want to say probably 60, 70% to the way to being able to just walk away from your job. That's what people need to think of. They see us now and they're like, I want that now. Kind of like that statement. Give me patience right now. Hurry up. Financial freedom is a decade away if you're starting now. Maybe faster, maybe 5 years. But if you shoot for 10, you will be happy at 5. If you shoot for 6 months or a year, you will be constantly frustrated and get shiny object syndrome and say, well, I didn't reach financial freedom by buying a rental, so maybe I'm going to flip a house. Well, I didn't reach it by flipping a house. I think I'm going to go try wholesaling. Well, that didn't work. I'm going to go to Only Homes. I see there was a question here at the top from Donnie. I want to cover that really quick. Donnie Bear, howdy. I have 3 rentals, all seller financed with 0% interest, all bought this year and currently have 140K in equity. What would be your plan? Refinance and buy more? Any advice would be great.
Stud.
So congratulations. Sounds like you've got seller financing figured out. Hopefully you can replicate that. Here's the part you might not want to hear. At no point in my 10 years to financial freedom did I pull money out. I didn't sell in 1031. I didn't do a home equity line of credit. I didn't do Mike's strategy of getting an asset, stabilizing it, getting private lenders to fund the next purchase, paying them, getting them a good return, and making a return on the purchase. I haven't done any of those kind of creative things. So Mike might have a different answer. For me, it's that 140,000 in equity. Look, but don't touch. Time. Right now, you should be stabilizing, optimizing profits, using the binder strategy to increase rents, improving your properties if possible by turning dens or family rooms into bedrooms, increasing rents, sometimes having tenant turnover to get the rents where they need to be. To make those make money, then add time. You use that money, still work, increase your income, still work on your side hustles, acquire the next rentals, build your reserves, because as your portfolio grows, the opportunity for things to happen at the same time increases. So you want larger reserves. And continue to recycle cash flow. That's what works best for me. But maybe you have a different timeline. Or you are more hands-on and want to do more work like Mike does. I wanted to talk to a lender, get a mortgage, buy a property, never think of that mortgage again, ever, unless rates dropped enough for me to say, oh, I should go increase my cash flow. Mike, what would you do? Three, no, it's not that he has 3 paid off rentals. It's 3 rentals, seller finance with 140,000 in equity. Thoughts?
Yeah. So Donnie, congratulations. That's freaking amazing. First of all, you did all of that in a year. The first thing that I would say is I'm not 100% sure if this was all one package deal. And if it was, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you were able to, in 1 year, find 3 different sellers to seller finance you, 3 different deals, all with 0% interest, clearly you are a master negotiator and you have developed a very good skill. If these are all 3 separate deals from 3 separate sellers, you have figured out how to go to people and get good real estate deals. I mean, I'm assuming that the amortization, the monthly payment, the down payment were all as good as the 0% financing. In which case, I would say I understand wanting to do something with the equity. I've done stuff with my equity. Getting a home equity line of credit allowed me to do the BRRRR strategy for like my 4th time right now. The only problem is if these are rental properties, it's going to be very hard to get a HELOC on, and especially now with credit tightening. I'm very, very hesitant to advise you to refinance one of these and go from 0% to a 10% interest rate. Possible that it might work, but if your 140K equity is split between 3 different properties, and we're going to assume, you've got, I don't know, 45,000 in equity per property or 40,000 per property, the amount of equity that a bank's going to even lend on might only be like 20,000 bucks. And that's if you can find one to even give you a HELOC. And if you do the refinance route, then maybe you'll pull 20 grand out, but then you're going to go from a 0% interest rate to a 10% interest rate. So because the equity position is so low, and that's not meant as an insult, but so low per property, it's probably not worth it to give up your 0% interest. And you've already demonstrated you have unbelievable talent for negotiating fantastic deals. I would just get back out there and try to find another one. And as much as it might suck to have to say, yeah, but not going to save the money up from scratch again, bro, I feel you 100%. But I wouldn't jeopardize what you currently have. I don't think there's enough juice in there to make it worth the squeeze to refinance out of this. I would just go back to the market, put that smile back on, and go get yourself another deal, big dog.
I love that. And I actually totally agree. I like the idea of, hey, you've got this figured out. You just rinse and repeat. I forget who said this, and I always like to give credit to people who say it. But you find something that's lucrative, and then you repeat it till it's boring. Doing the boring work, and it's nobody in the one rental at a time that said, somebody else that said that, but making something that you're so good at it's boring, and then continue to do it is where wealth comes from. There's a couple things going on here that I want to talk about in the chat. The first one that I saw down here from T. Adams is asking a tax question. First, do we file as tax professionals? Second, have we done cost segregation? So I'm going to talk really quick on that. I am not a real estate professional. There are 2 criteria that you have to meet that I don't to be a tax professional. And I'm not going to commit fraud because, well, prison is the ultimate house hack. It's not my retirement plan. You have to work more than 751 hours in a year in real estate. 2 hours a month doesn't cut it for me. You have to work more in real estate than you do in a W-2 job, which the CPAs that I've interacted with have always said anybody who has a W-2, generally, no matter how much they work in real estate, if they also have a W-2, doesn't qualify. So those 2 things would stop me from doing it. There is a loophole that Mike is researching to look into on the short-term rental way to offset W-2 income with it. So we'll probably be making a video on that at some point. So no, I'm not. And then cost segregation, even with over $200,000 in profit in 2022, I still paid 0 in income tax for rentals because of depreciation and write-offs. When a cost segregation makes sense, in my mind, and you always want to talk to your tax pro on this, is when you have a W-2 that has a lot of income and you're a real estate professional and you can use that to offset that income, or you're an entrepreneur and you can use that cost segregation to offset the income from your non-W-2 wages. Or you have the example of Matt the lumberjack landlord, where he has a W-2, his spouse stopped working and became a real estate professional, and her status of real estate professional allows them as a unit to use it against his income. So the cost segregation can make sense against that large income. Here's the downside to a cost segregation study, and the reason why I don't ever want to do one. You could take the items that would be depreciated, right? So real quick, root 30-second education on depreciation. Even though your properties are worth more, they've appreciated in value, we get to tell the government my buildings are a year older, so I'm going to take 27.5 years, divide the property value of the buildings, take that 1 year off against my income. So we get to write off a non-real loss. It's a projected loss in the future because your buildings will eventually need to be worked on, even though they've appreciated in value. Well, a cost segregation study takes the items that could be done at 5 or 15 years and does them in year 1. Sounds great. You get a bunch of write-offs this year. But it also takes that 100% of your depreciation spread out over 27 and a half years down to around 75% for the remainder of your depreciation schedule. I plan on making money off of rentals for a lot more than this first year. I want my depreciation next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when rents continue to increase, because here's the thing that's going to suck really bad, and the problem I hope all of you have. At some point in the future, I will have some properties where the mortgages are paid down, or the mortgages have basically stayed the same and the rents have gone up significantly. And I will make so much money, professional term is a metric crap ton of money, that I will have to write a check for taxes. I'll be happy to do that. But until then, I'm going to use depreciation and write-offs to delay that as far as possible. And while, yes, if your situation says this year a cost segregation study will benefit you by so much that you are okay having to pay taxes sooner in the future, then it can make sense. Hope that helped, T. Adams. That's how I look at it. Anything there you want to add on tax filing status and cost segregation?
So the lumberjack swears by the cost segregation. And if you are truly interested in doing cost seg, he has like a referral code or something that'll get you like 50% off, like $500 off or something. So make sure you go to his channel or watch one of his lives, because don't overpay. He swears up and down by it. He has multiple 5 to 8 unit buildings. He has 137 units, but a lot of those are like 5 to 8 unit buildings. And he says that it's absolutely worth it pulling forward all that bonus depreciation. And I think that it probably isn't in almost all markets. There are some markets where, because the value of the property is so cheap itself, like the houses that I buy, because when they calculate depreciation, they split the land from the actual house, because the land doesn't depreciate, the house depreciates. And then they take the house and they divide that by 127 and a half. And so if the house is so cheap that it physically can't be depreciated enough, it's possible that a cost seg may not be worth it. But that's such a minute possibility that in almost all cases, certainly in $500,000 duplexes like the one that I bought when I started house hacking, yes, it makes a lot of sense to do the cost segregation method. So you should probably take advantage of that. But you can always just chat with the guys that Lumberjack recommends. They'll give you a little free consultation, like talk with you about it for 10 or 15 minutes. They'll probably answer your questions and get you started.
Thank you for that. I'm going to read the name because you're the one who chose to put it on your YouTube channel. This is a question from Booger Fart Boy.
My son's YouTube channel right there.
All of our inner 5-year-olds is that way you're 6 here. She said, regarding your binder strategy, I have a rental that is managed by a property manager. How would you handle that? This is exactly how I would handle that. I would go, and thank you for this question, to diontalk.com/binder, or just diontalk.com. There are 3 things that you can do there. One of them is you can book an hour with me on Zoom. Second is you can take the free binder course, right? This is kind of like my trademark thing, the thing that I think I am most known for. I get my tenants to ask me to raise the rent. I make sure that's free. It cost me 10 grand to put together a freaking course, but it's free. It benefits the tenants as much as it benefits the owners. They don't get displaced. They get educated. They get to be a part of the conversation. So I think since it benefits both sides of this transaction, I'm not trying to monetize it. As long as I can, because it still costs me $300 or $400 a month to maintain the stupid thing to be there. So you can have a free course. There are modules inside the binder course on how to do it at a distance, how to do it through text, through email, when to do it. It reminds me, I got to make that video on when to raise rents, or did I do that already? I have to check because I forget. And exactly how to do it with property management, how to propose it to them, how to give them the information so that you don't feel like you're walking on their toes. So it's all there in the course on how to handle it with property manager, because it does work with property management as well. Because sometimes they've either, 1, never thought of the concept, or 2, are so against the concept that you might want to actually look at what your rents are compared to area average and decide if you want to stay with that property manager. You are a customer. You dictate terms. They have to agree to them, but you still get to do that. And I see a couple of other suggestions down here on what to do with the house hack. How does tax work from G? And then Mike, can you correct me if I go over a question, because I don't want to miss any.
Sure.
Or bring them back. But I see one here from G on how does tax work on a house hack. I'll give you a couple of examples. My first duplex purchase was a house hack, right? So I was living in apartments, paying $1,500 a month, moved into a duplex. My tenants paid the majority of the mortgage. I still paid $300 a month, right? House hacking doesn't mean you live for free or you get paid to live there in every case. It can. When I moved to the fourplex, I started getting paid to live there. But in my duplex, I still had some expenses. I occupied 50% of the property. So 50% of the property can be depreciated. The other side was not depreciated. And if I wasn't into real estate as much and had as many rentals as I was going, I could use the standard tax deduction as a homeowner because I own the house there. I still had, since I own rentals, 100 square feet of office space being written off, my internet access being written off, all of the taxes without having an LLC, because it doesn't have any impact on your taxes, of having a business, all the miles on my car, all the expenses to my car that were related to the business. So when you house hack, what amount of your property are you occupying? When I moved to the fourplex, I was then occupying 25%. So 75% was depreciated, 25% was mine, but I still had the office space and all the other expenses. I'm now out of the fourplex, so it is being depreciated. The duplex is being depreciated. I'm in a new duplex where, again, I'm occupying half of it. Where it gets confusing, and this is one of those things where it isn't something I've done or had to do or had to think about, is if you rent out by the room and you live in the house, talk with your tax professional and maybe get a second opinion, just in case they're not an EA and on all the current codes. Like I saw in the Book of Faces the other day, somebody saying, my tax pro said I had to have an LLC to get all of the benefits of owning a business with a rental. Get a second opinion. And not just somebody telling you you're ugly. When it comes to taxes, it's 87,000 pages or some ridiculous 2,000 pages or something of the tax code. We benefit from the taxes of owning real estate. We do not let the tax benefits of real estate dictate what we do. An example is a lot of people say, well, never pay off your house because then you have to pay taxes. I want interest so I can write that off. No, I do not want a mortgage for the tax benefits. It's when I have a mortgage because that leverage made sense, increased my return, got me into a property that I wouldn't have done with all cash because I didn't have that amount. All the benefits of having a mortgage, I will then take the added benefit of writing off the interest. Because writing off $1,000 in interest to save $300 on your 30% tax bracket on professional term coming up is stupid. But if you have $1,000 going out in interest, take the benefit of the $300 write-off. REI Stoners. I felt through the force there was a live going on. Howdy, Josh. My first application today. Congratulations. We've been going back and forth a little bit on the listing and sharing a handyman, which is a little frustrating.
Is it working for him?
The guy that I sent to you that it does good work, but his weird schedule is finishing up one of my units too. Remember, I had a military guy move out on orders. So my 5th tenant turnover now. So I feel like I'm getting better at something I don't want to get better at. Although it doesn't suck when somebody moves out that you've been trying to keep the rent at a really good rate because I support the troops and I don't like to raise rents other than the binder strategy. I'd use the binder strategy on him. Now that he's gone, that rent's going up almost $500 a month.
Nice.
So I will miss him, but the money will help.
You're right.
And then all that Hyder posted the binder strategy. Thank you for that. And again, in there is how to do it with a property manager. Bruno, howdy. And then I see that you are a member. I see the thing there. Members only live stream Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific. This week's going to be Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific. Members only. Looking at deals, my deals, your deals. Looking at markets. In Zoom, where everybody jumps in Zoom. We all hang out together. You don't have to drink the hard water. You can just bring regular water. Are there any questions I'm missing here, Mike?
77T Adams said, I have short-term rentals, would like a video on thoughts.
There you go.
I mean, I guess I can answer it because you don't have any. So I just converted my duplex house hack into an Airbnb like 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, maybe. Did my first month as an Airbnb host, and it is definitely significantly more work. Now, if you're going to hire a manager, just like any type of real estate investing, you get a property manager that could limit the amount of work that you're doing, but they're going to charge you money for that. And a lot of Airbnb property managers charge like 30%. Some charge as low as 15%, but usually those are in the very high rent areas, places that are going to get like $10,000 a month in income. And as far as converting, if you're willing to do the extra work in terms of going over there and cleaning the place, and then managing the app and managing people's requests and stuff like that, it's a lot more work than a long-term tenant, but it's not like it's a lot of work. The most work that I spend is just going over there and doing the laundry and changing the sheets and cleaning up. So you could hire a maid out. If you were going to hire a maid and just manage the tenants on the app, that's not that difficult. I mean, it's literally just like getting a text every other day with, hey, these people want to book this time, and you just say yes or no. That's pretty easy. The only really hard stuff is actually physically cleaning. And it's not like it's hard work, but like the only actual time consuming work is going over there and physically cleaning the unit on a regular basis. I was able to take my cash flow from $2,150, what a long-term tenant paid me, to $2,850 my first month. That's a $700 increase. But now I'm paying the electrical, I'm paying the internet bill, I'm paying all the utilities over there that I wasn't paying previously. So my break-even point is about $3,000. I think that I should be able to get that this month, hopefully. Hopefully this month, next month, if I hit 3,000, I'll consider that a win. And then you also have to be aware of the fact that it's very heavily review-based. You want to be a super host. In order to be a super host, you have to have a bunch of good reviews and be doing it for a few months. Have to have X number of stays, X number of positive reviews, yada, yada. So you really have to cater to people. Oh, you want early check-in? You want late checkout? No problem, no problem. You know, that type of stuff. And if you're not customer service oriented, then it's probably not for you unless you're going to hire that manager. I've heard a lot of people who do hire managers get really frustrated when the manager screws up and doesn't treat them as well as you would have treated them. I've heard that story told many times. Oh, my Airbnb property manager was being rude to people. I don't know why. Now I've got bad reviews. Now I can't get bookings. So there's definitely a lot of intricacies and hurdles that don't exist with long-term rentals, but you can potentially make significantly more money. So it's a trade-off. It's how much do you want to do? How hard do you want to work? So far, I am enjoying it. If I can get up to $3,500 a month, I'll consider that an absolute win. I'll be thrilled that I did it because it's, you know, almost a $1,500 increase in the amount of money coming in each month. If I really only hit about $3,000 a month consistently, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it to do all of that extra work and paid to have furnished it versus if I had just taken my long-term rental and re-rented it. It probably, if I don't make at least $3,000 a month, it's definitely not worth it. But that's why on my channel, I make videos of my decisions, my experiences. I share all of the data, the numbers, the stats, the reviews, so everybody can look at it and then make that decision for themselves, because I want an open and honest, transparent discussion instead of the pie in the sky fluff that you get from a lot of these influencers who they have gotten rich being the people who sell the gold diggers pickaxes. They ain't out there digging for gold themselves. They sell you a fairy tale fluff story of how they made money with short-term rentals, but they didn't really make that much money, or they didn't really make that much money on the rentals they bought. But they're really, really good at looking very pretty or looking like they have a very fun lifestyle on social media. And so they sell you that dream. Then they charge you their, $1,000 for their course, and they sell that 2,000-3,000 times, and they make several $100,000 to $1 million. And that's how they're able to perpetuate the lifestyle. They ain't actually making that much money on real estate. So you got to be aware of that. Not a lot of open, honest, transparent people out there.
So I actually know who you were talking about, and it is not who I'm about to reference. So that's not sarcasm. I'm about to reference somebody that is not who Mike was talking about.
She is cute, though.
Did you see that? Yeah, right. Did you see that Shelby Church went from short-term back to long-term with her rental?
I did not. I'll have to go look that up.
Yep. That's her most recent decision was, long-term, just it's easier, makes more sense in my area.
Yeah.
She bought before prices went up, and she bought with a low interest rate. So she has that option. It's the very few people who bought in the last year, high price, high interest rate, who needed short-term rental, who aren't getting it, that are not doing great. And then I put a phone number in the chat to answer Rob's question that everybody should give a call to. No, it's not my ex. I'm not that kind of guy.
Oh, I thought that was what it was going to be for sure.
No, yeah. No, it's just a number. And then I saw a question here. Is it possible to house hack with Section 8? But I want to make sure I want to see who said it, because I want to give credit where the question came from, and I lost it. Maybe you could find it while I'm talking here for a second on, is it possible to house hack with Section 8? Short answer, yes, absolutely. Long answer, if you buy a small multifamily house or a house with an ADU, you can have the other units approved for Section 8. Right? So it's very simple and very easy to, not easy. You can make it easier than it has to be, than it could be, to rent to Section 8 and house hack. It's when you rent by the room with Section 8 that it becomes tricky. It is possible for Section 8 to do rent by the room. There's actually a term that the lumberjack landlord used that I couldn't remember on when they have a voucher that will allow for it's a single bedroom studio, or it's called something else. Section 8 will allow that, but not all counties allow it, and not everybody can have the voucher. So is it possible? Yes, but it's like Joe Asamoah, primarily focusing on Section 8 in the Washington, D.C. area, where he buys 5 and 6 bedroom houses and gets a lot of rent because there's very few of those houses available. In my area, those houses are available, and there are very few vouchers for people for a 5 and 6 bedroom. So it depends on your local market, whether it's going to make sense or not. Check with your local housing authority or possibly nonprofit that runs the voucher system in your county and say, do you have a program for people who rent by the room? And then you can house hack by the room, because that's a little more local, possible, not possible, versus I own a fourplex. I just had a service member move out. I'm having a unit redone by Jeremy, who finished at Josh's yesterday because he was sick and couldn't get to my job, and Josh just tattled on him. Is finishing mine up today. I'm thinking of adding that to my roster of potential voucher units, except it's in the county where the housing authority sucks. And I never want to name anybody by name, but Pierce County Housing Authority is the worst one that I've seen. I named them by name. There we go.
So it was Andy Borch that asked that question, and
Thank
he
you.
follows up with a second question a little further down.
Okay.
He says, Dion and Mike, how would you recommend mentioning in the listing that I'm occupying the basement ADU? All approved applicants have not moved forward when they find out about that in the viewing. And I saw this question, I think on a live stream or something else you put of Dion's. From what I remember, I believe you were listing this as a house for rent. You need to list it as a duplex for rent, because people are going to assume that house for rent means they are the sole occupant of that house. And when they find out there's someone else living there, yeah, most people are not looking for that. That are looking for houses are looking to be in the house themselves. So list it as duplex for rent. And you can write it as an up-down duplex. Now, you don't have to specifically say that you are the owner living in the basement. I've never advertised that I own the property, but I always list duplex for rent or unit A of a duplex for rent. And then the people that are coming there will now be expecting there to be somebody else in that building as well. And you're going to have much more success. But somebody who's out here like, oh yeah, I want to go get a house. Sweet. This house looks great. We love it. Oh, there's someone else living here. Oh, well, how come it didn't say it was a duplex and it said it was a house?
Great answer. That's exactly, as soon as you said the question, I just wrote down duplex. I would have the word duplex in the description and clearly indicate that, so that you get the people that are aware who show up.
Right. Yeah, you're out here catfishing people with your house. That's the problem.
Yeah, CJ says, why does it matter? It matters because the people have to know when they initially see it. And you want to list the rental from the perspective of the tenant, not the owner, because we think in things of age of building, square footage. Tenants don't. Give yourself a raise. I'm about to house hack a duplex I'm moving into with a Section 8 tenant. Awesome. There you go. Rob says a mechanic is coming by this morning to look at my jet ski that Dion made me get. Everybody should own a jet ski, but you should have assets buy it and assets pay for it. Afro capitalist, why can't we consider rent increase or appreciation when purchasing if we are holding for 10 years plus? Because they're not guaranteed. You can mentally count on it. You could think it's going to be there. But if you have something like an adjustable rate mortgage or a HELOC where the rate adjusts in 10 years or a balloon payment, those are things you can't count on. Buy a rental, and if rent stayed flat because population didn't grow, people moved away, businesses, not people, businesses moved away, base closed, port closed, there's strikes. Appreciation and rent increases that are planned on is gambling, speculation. We can count on rents not going down, but I even invest planning on rents to go down, even though we've never seen that. So if I plan on rents going down in my investing strategy, I'm definitely not going to plan for rents going up or invest in a syndication that has scheduled planned rent increases going forward for years. Is very dangerous. We're finding that out now as several syndications are just going back. And the first person who loses their money is the LPs, and then the lenders, and then the GPs. Like they just, Afro-capitalist, it's a gamble. But I'll say that it's a gamble. Gambling's not bad. Gambling's okay. You don't gamble the rent money, right? You gamble the extra $20 that you don't care if you lose when you only have, you're a 100,000-aire. When you're a multimillionaire and you have tens of thousands of cash flow every month, and you throw $500,000 at a property that needs appreciation and needs rent grows to be a good deal, but you plan on there being there. And if you lost that entire $500,000 and you wouldn't care, notice or feel it, yeah, there are investors who will make appreciation plays and gamble on rent increases with a very small percentage of their overall portfolio, which to most of us seems like a significant amount. But there are investors who $500,000, half a stick means nothing. So it's not that we can't increase it, it's that we shouldn't until it wouldn't impact you if it didn't happen. Nice. Getting a kayak ready. Mike, do you ever do paddleboarding?
Yeah, I've paddleboard.
Okay. Is that something you guys can do together and it's not gay?
First of all,
would
I care whether or not it was?
Right.
Second of all, absolutely. But I'd rather go kayaking. I love kayaking.
Okay.
Yeah, paddleboarding, in my personal opinion, I'm not super. I don't know why I don't have the balance for it super well.
Well, it's probably because you're 7.5 feet taller than me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. So, but yeah, I've done paddleboarding before. It's fun, but I love kayaking and canoeing. I mean, I did when I was in Boy Scouts when I was a kid. I did 50-mile canoe trips, all the water merit badges. I had them for show. Kayaking's a blast.
All Night Hider says tide swing is in 3 hours, so it needs to hurry up. Yeah, so it's kind of like that if you come over here, because we could kayak from my place or we can paddleboard or whatever. But we have to watch the tide because I'm in a place where the tide does go out like 50 feet of muck. So, but when the tide's in, it's good.
Right.
I'm looking for other questions. I do see one that's kind of not real estate related, unless it is. CJ says, what are the plans for the weekend? Anything good this weekend or what?
We can hang out this weekend if you're free.
I am free Sunday afternoon.
I probably can't do anything on Sunday afternoon. Darn it.
There you go. Then the weekend's booked.
I was going to say Saturday afternoon, evening. I was good, but yeah.
Yeah, no, tomorrow I've got the BiggerPockets at 2, then the members at 4.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And a date in the morning. So Saturday's planned.
My man.
Right.
That's why I'm not available in the morning too.
Right. This
actually
sucks. You still have to hunt. It's just terrible. Anyway,
I got a date Friday night, but I just have faith in myself. So,
any questions I'm missing here? And this is the point. This is your opportunity to ask any real estate or financial freedom related questions, or like CJ did, any questions. Ask a version of Ask Me Anything.
We still got Zuber's question. So we talked about how young.
Oh, there you go. We did the first one.
But we didn't talk about his next question for us, which is what should a 35-year-old do today to get started investing in real estate who's married with 2 kids and getting burned out hustling, but getting nowhere? Dion, you want to answer this one first?
Well, the best financial decision I ever did in my life was divorce. So I don't think that's everyone else's best option. So at 35 with 2 kids, if your marriage is good, we'll just, every time you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and umption, right? But we're going to do that. And we're going to say, stay married, tired of hustling. I think if you're tired of hustling, I think that hustling sounds like you're trying to be paid for your time instead of your results. Find a new way to make money that doesn't take either as much time or as much effort. The whole work smarter, not harder. Maybe that's changing companies instead of climbing the corporate ladder. Maybe that's learning a new skill that you don't consider to be work. For me, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I bounced around jobs for a little bit. I was homeless for several years. Me and my son lived in a bus. And I was a windmill mechanic. I worked in an auto shop. I did whatever job came along. And then one day somebody said, if you get a CDL, you could sit in a truck, listen to the radio, stay warm, and somebody will pay you a bunch of money. And I was like, that's a job? You just sit there and listen to audiobooks? And back then it was books on tape. I literally went to the library and get stacks of books. I couldn't believe I was paid to entertain myself. Find a job that doesn't feel like work. That makes more money. Find a side hustle that makes more money that doesn't take as much time. For me, that side hustle was buy and hold real estate. House hacking reduced those first housing expenses, right? So it made it easier to save. And some people say, well, he's 35, he's married, he's got 2 kids, there's no way he can house hack. His family is the reason to consider adding house hacking to the arsenal of tools instead of the barrier. A house with an ADU or a small multifamily, don't share space if you have young kids with strangers. I totally understand the mentality, but a duplex with garages in the middle, separate fenced backyards. How many millions of families live in apartments? It's like that, except you get to pick and screen the neighbor and you have your own fenced yard. So I would consider house hacking 35 with a wife or spouse, because it could be the girl that's thinking financial freedom too.
Or it could be a couple paddleboarding bros.
It could be a couple paddleboarding bros too. Yep. And oh man, every joke that came to mind is so inappropriate. I have to cancel your channel in 3, 2, 1. No, not gonna go there. Consider house hacking. Consider adding cash flowing assets to your portfolio, because the thing that I liked with self-managing my rentals and keeping it to less than 2 hours a month. And a lot of times people think I work 40 hours a week. Dion works 2 hours a week. So let me think mentally what that's like. 40 hours of get up, get ready, commute, have a boss, have customers, deal with everything at work. Sometimes it's physical. You're literally the person moving materials or loading or unloading or doing very deep dive work into a spreadsheet, researching data, whatever your job is, versus the 2 hours that is predominantly opening up an app to make sure I got paid. Like I count that time. About an hour and a half a month is just making sure the rent payments came in. Half an hour, maybe an hour once in a while, is talking to a handyman saying, hey, I've got a tenant turnover. It's this unit at the fourplex. Have it done by Tuesday. Thursday, why is it not done? Hey, it's Friday. Are you there today? That's what my week has been this week. So 3 calls so far to get the guy that was at Josh's back to my unit today. He's there today, though. So that should be done. Find side hustles that don't take more time, energy, and effort. Either you enjoy it, or you can buy a cash flowing asset like a rental property that if you learn the skills, because believe me, that first couple of years, it didn't take 2 hours a month. It felt like it took 20 hours a week to manage one tenant because I didn't have the systems. I didn't have handyman ready. I didn't have all my numbers for emergency plumbers, electricians, and all that stuff to where it was a problem for me if something went wrong. Now everything is handled with a text, maybe an email, and rarely a phone call, very rarely. That's what I would do if you're getting burnt out on the hustle. But if the most important financial decision you can make of your life is the person you choose to spend your time with, I think something Dave Ramsey said recently that I completely agree with. Both you and I agree with Dave Ramsey on one of the most important financial decisions you can make in your life is the spouse you choose to have or not have in your life. And with that, I go off of Richard Branson's quote, the guy that made Virgin Airlines. It's better to have a hole on your team than an a-hole on your team. So sometimes divorce is the answer. But in this case, how do you get your spouse on board? I met with a young gentleman when I went to Florida, and he wanted to house hack, and his spouse was not really feeling it. They both had pretty good jobs, come from pretty good families with money, so they're not coming from super hard backgrounds where it doesn't matter as long as we have a place to live. Was the mentality is, no, I kind of want my place. I told him, find out what matters to her. Financial freedom might not even be on her radar. She might think, yeah, I want to work and have a job and have my coworkers like my mom does. She's in her 60s and still loves it. That's her mentality. I said, what matters to her? And so what worked was, I said, what would happen if you house hacked? He said, the one we found would increase our cash flow by about $600 a month. And I told him, I said, okay, cool. Take $200 of that $600 in cash flow that you increase from the $600 coming in, and that's hers. You tell her it's hers. She gets it, and you can't question her. You can't ask her anything. She can take her friends to lunch. She can go take her friend and get a manicure or whatever. It doesn't matter. Take that money to pay for that, and you can never question her. It's hers. The $400 that's left isn't yours. It's both of yours to continue investing, because you're the one who wants to house hack. You're the one that wants financial future to be better. What does she want right now? A little more spending cash. They did that. They've been house hacking now for over a year. Get your spouse on board. Find a creative way to do that. Have the conversation. Maybe they're already on board and they've just been waiting for you to wake up. That's my suggestion for the 35-year-old with 2 kids. And make sure you know those 2 kids aren't the barrier. They're the motivation. When I started house hacking, I had 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son. And house hacking was pretty much a requirement. And I wasn't even thinking financial freedom or retiring early. I actually said for a decade, Mike heard me say this a lot in the last few years, I'm probably never going to retire early. I might not even retire late, which shifted to sometime between tomorrow and 3 years from now. And then happened. My goal was, that is my handyman. Mike, I want to let you talk.
I got you. Okay, so we were talking in this question, what should a 35-year-old do? Let me read the question one more time for everybody. This is a question from Zuber. He asked us to make some videos for him. And he said, what should a 35-year-old do today? They're married with 2 kids. They're getting burned out hustling. And they're getting nowhere. Now, he didn't say anything about their financial status. So I'm going to look at it at the 35-year-old peers that I have in the workforce right now. Most of the people that I work with, some coworkers, 35 years old, married with a couple of kids. Most people at that point in life have figured life out enough to the point where they have some savings, they have a stable income, maybe even 2 incomes if both people are working. But unfortunately, they're usually still living, I would say, paycheck to paycheck, but maybe just saving like a small amount. They have a little bit of savings. I would say that if I was going to advise this person on how they could get started investing in real estate, it really does come down to where they are specifically with their finances. They're probably going to need to cut back. They're probably going to need to cut a few things out and just save that extra money. But it's very tough because you got kids that are going into sports. You've got kids that are, getting braces and things like that. There's a lot of expenses. That's, as the Money Guy show, which is a show I love to watch. The Money Guy show says that your 30s are the messy middle. And I love that phrase because it is. There's just a bunch of different things that are going on, unplanned and planned. You want to take vacations. You want to build memories with your kids. So I understand why it's tough to get started here. I think it is actually better to get started when you're young with no kids, no wife. Or Zuber's last question is when you're a 55-year-old empty nester. Not a bad time to get started there either. But it's tough to get started in the messy middle. That being said, a lot of people do it. You may have a retirement account that you could potentially raid and instead turn into a rental retirement account. Obviously, you need to figure out if that's right for you. That's not me just saying immediately go and deplete your 401k. But if I was going to tell people, Dion started with house hacking. I think house hacking is an incredibly powerful thing. It's definitely going to go down as the best financial decision that I ever made. But he's right. It is very tough to sell a spouse on that. And most of the questions that I get from people are, hey, Mike, I understand you house hack. I'm the same age as you. I can't get my wife on board. And I get it. Women don't like to go backwards in comfort levels. Men, we can be like, hey, mattress on the floor, no problem. The amount of memes I see where it's like, ladies are like, I can't believe this guy has a mattress on the floor. Like, I can sleep on a mattress on the floor till the day I die. Why would I waste money on a bed frame? The only reason I have money spent on a bed frame, the only reason I have money spent on nice sheets, the only reason I have money spent on a couple of Costco decorative pillows is because I know they ain't for me. It's so that I can get a repeat so that the lady will want to come back more than just one. But like, yeah, you have to take into consideration the comfort level of your partner, and especially if it's the wife and like mother of your kids. So if you absolutely can't convince them to house hack, since Dion covered that pretty well, if you can't convince them to house hack, that's fine. You can still get them on board with investing in real estate. You might just have to skip house hacking, in which case I would recommend right now looking at seller financing, because it's a traditional way of buying real estate. It's getting more and more difficult to get cash flow from. A lot of the big YouTube influencers out there, Ryan Pineda, Brandon Turner, David Green, yeah, don't worry about cash flow. No big deal. Just think about appreciation. No, I would still prioritize cash flow. Cash flow is how you replace your income. Cash flow is how you get to retirement quicker. Cash flow is how you survive a downside in a recession. And if you want your wife to say, I told you so faster than anything else, it's own that negative cash flowing property during a recession and lose your job, bro. She's going to tell you, I told you so with some papers, and it's not going to be fun for you. So, Dion, are you back? You still on the phone?
Nope, I'm back.
Cool. All right. I'll wrap it up. I would suggest do everything you can to get educated about creative financing and seller financing. Start learning and understanding your market. If you have a spouse that's hard to get on board, the only way that you overcome uncertainty and doubt is with confidence and competence. You need to demonstrate competence. It's also very helpful if you have other people that have done it. There have been, Dion and I, unfortunately, lately haven't been able to attend the local real estate meetup because we've both been busy, but there's been a lot of people who brought their spouses. I've talked with people whose spouses weren't super confident about investing in real estate, but upon seeing the success stories of other people, they can gain that confidence. And maybe your spouse isn't the type to watch the 20-minute YouTube video you send them, but maybe they'll attend a real estate meetup. Maybe they'll sit down and have dinner and realize, oh, hey, there's other people my age that are doing this. It's possible. And maybe they'll get that confidence to get started.
Nice. My handyman called me to ask a question, and it was a phone call. That's super rare. Yeah. But when you're paying somebody to be somewhere, thank you for taking over and letting me handle that.
Yeah.
He's replacing a sink and a faucet. And he was asking if I wanted the wall valves replaced too. I usually do, but this time, since there are no issues, we'll do that in the future. Red Berserker, been considering changing jobs for the better pay, but I know it'll affect the lending available. I have some DSCR loans on the radar, so it won't be too bad. Just tired of being one of a few reliable ones. What would you do? If you're changing jobs to make more money, is it a career change, or is it changing jobs from one company to another but staying in the same field? That's the first thing to think of. Is it doesn't really affect lending if you stay in the same field or industry. It's when you go, like I did, from law enforcement to truck driving to teaching truck driving, that it took 2 years for the lenders to go, okay, you've had teaching job for 2 years now, that counts. DSCR is a good option. Always consider seller financing too, but DSCR doesn't look at your work history, your salary, your income, your debt to income ratio, just your credit score, and then how the property will perform. But usually has a higher down payment and a little bit higher interest rate. Often, but not always. Check. There have been times when it inverted where DSCR loans were lower interest than conventional. Not often, but it has happened. I do like the idea of increasing income. I mean, the idea is financial freedom, but for those 5 to 10 years to reach financial freedom, the more money you can make, the more options that happen, because you save faster for down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and the reserves that lenders are going to require. So how much is the job increase, and is it a field change? That would be what I look at there. Mike, you did the big change, less than $50,000 a year, thinking, okay, first thing I got to do is how do I make more money? You did that with Darius too. You know, Darius was making okay money, and you got him the job making 26, and I think he's now on the radar of getting his CDL. I've connected him with the vice president of the company to get his CDL and get him a good. He's making 26 now. Most driving jobs start off 30, well, 28 to 32 an hour. So it's a pretty good increase there. And then there are better jobs, especially if you want prevailing wage. Random guess, Mike. Do you know what the prevailing wage starting is for a CDL driver in the state of Washington?
$40 an hour?
So the last time I heard was 2021. So it's gone up a little bit since then, but it was $56 an hour. So in professional terms, that doesn't suck.
But metric crap ton again.
Exactly.
But you
Then
know
I
what?
see a couple people talking about Vegas, so I want to make sure we reference the one rental at a time 50,000 subscriber celebration for Michael Zuber's channel, February 17th and 18th, the week prior to that weekend. Some of us are going to be in Vegas up until that weekend and there for the weekend. Hanging out, we'll have some midnight Denny's meetups, and then everybody gets to hang out there. I think there's like 12 of the one rental at a time group kind of going to be there for that weekend. It's happening at the Blind Center in Las Vegas. You can still get tickets at onerentalatime.com. I think he's
Not many left.
not many. It's like 40 to 60 or something tickets left. I still think we should have raffled off a date with Millennial Mike, but it wasn't my event to do so. Zuber dropped the ball.
I'll happily go paddleboarding with any one of our.
I think Rob would have done it. Rob would have said, "Let's go shooting," because he talks about you getting shot every week. See a couple people talking about Jason Hartman. I really recommend checking out Jason Hartman's channel too. He is on the side of long-term buy and hold, use your brain, don't fall for fear porn. Aloha from Hawaii. Howdy, Mark. How are you? And I see all night Hatter. What did he call you, Dion? I hope it wasn't a compliment. Oh, no. What did he call me? I think he ended the call with, "It's all going great. Everything here is unicorn blood and koala pee." That's how his normal day goes. Why is there so much hate for cash flow nowadays? Yeah, we're seeing that on
Great question.
BiggerPockets. And so the real estate rookie show, which is by BiggerPockets, isn't on the bandwagon. They are still 10 deals or less, reach financial freedom, get on the property ladder. Here's creative ways to do it. They have a lot of guests on there. BiggerPockets still has guests that are on there that I like, but a lot of the rhetoric that we're seeing from Brandon and David, and it's weird. I'm a David Green fan. Like I like the idea of how hard it is to find somebody who's worked in law enforcement who can be articulate when they're talking. Normally they can quote an RCW by heart. But if you ask them to actually have a thought, they're saying it's harder to get cash flow, so just don't do it. No, it's harder to get cash flow, so you shift with the market. Here's the things that aren't working. Here's the things that are. Here's some other strategies you can try. Instead of, no, just, and I hate to say this, send me money, put it in my syndication, and I will get you a good return. And then I'll go to Thatch Newen's quote. When it comes to syndications, the bigger the name, the smaller the return. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, feel free to soapbox, pontificate, why all the hate for cash flow? Because it is the only, cash flow is important, but the metric I get cash flow from is from yield. So yield is the metric I use, but cash flow set me free.
Mm-hmm. So I have a video coming out that talks about how to get cash flow from rentals because I want to answer that question in depth. 10 strategies you can use to get cash flowing rentals in 2024. I have another video coming out that's called David Green Exposed. And I'm thinking about doing my Brandon Turner one and all of BiggerPockets. And I can tell you exactly why cash flow is getting hate. It's very simple. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of these influencers, this is my main problem with BiggerPockets, is that when they first started out, back when Michael Zuber wrote for them, did you know he was their second ever interview? I knew he was early. I didn't realize he was number 2. I went back and looked at their old videos. He's like the number 2 video that was an interview on that channel. And if my battery runs out, you'll have to take over and I'll just swap it out. Here's the reason why they're hating on cash flow. Somewhere along the way, they lost their original message, which was to have open, honest conversations about real estate investing to help the average little guy get started. They lost their ability to have a genuine relationship with their audience like we tried to have with you guys. And instead, their mission became, how can we sell more books, boot camps, courses, masterminds, accountability groups, webinars, seminars, events, BiggerPockets, all these different ways that they make money. Again, like I said earlier, they are the individual selling pickaxes to the gold miners. They will happily tell you a beautiful story about how to invest in real estate and retire with cash flow, which is the story that they told on repeat, all of their hosts, all of their videos, all of their guests, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow for 10 to 12 years. And now they are gaslighting you by pretending Well, we don't know who came up with these cash flow ideas. It was some influencers out there talking about cash flow. And I clipped the segments of David Green saying that out in the video I'm going to release of him gaslighting the audience and pretending that BiggerPockets wasn't the leading voice talking about specifically investing for cash flow for over a decade. That's how they built their brand. And now they're pivoting. Why? Why would they pivot away? Because it's almost impossible to find a cash flowing rental in any market that there is in the US right now. So how do you sell pickaxes to gold miners when everybody knows there's no more gold? You got to say gold isn't what you should be digging for. Titanium is, platinum is, silver is, and we know where the silver is. It's actually over here. Don't worry about gold. We used to like gold. Gold was cool. We're not a big fan of it anymore, but now we like silver because, principal pay down and tax write-offs and appreciation. These are what you should be focusing on now. We don't know who came up with the cash flow. If you want to keep the machine of BiggerPockets running, you have to sell courses, boot camps, masterminds, and all these. You have to keep the engine of interest moving forward. And that means you've got to sell the dream to new people, and you got to sell the pickaxes to new gold miners. And you can't sell pickaxes to people who know for damn sure that cash flow and gold.
And there goes his battery. And anybody over 40 just saw the channel shut off. So I agree, Andy. It's the Grant Cardone syndrome with BiggerPockets. When your channel generates the money instead of your real estate, you have to direct people to the channel. So if your syndications are making you the money, you direct people to your syndications. Grant Cardone says it often. He says, look, if I'm buying a real estate and you're buying real estate, if it doesn't have 16 units, don't waste your time. It doesn't have 32 units, don't waste your time. But Grant got to start with a single family house. So I agree with that. I think the shift is something to watch out for. Kind of like whenever before I met Millennial Mike, and somebody would say, how do I get somebody in their 20s or 30s interested in real estate? How do I get them interested in their finances? I now say, well, hey, here's this person from his own age bracket that's going to talk in language they understand. I used to say, here's Meet Kevin, here's Graham Stephan. They have got some great videos from 2016 to 2020 focusing on finances and earning as much as you can, spending as little as you can, saving and investing the difference, right? The basic fundamentals. And then their channels blew up and they got so big that Meet Kevin got into politics and stimulus videos, and Graham Stephan got into reacting videos to millennial money and all these other things. Now, every now and then, Graham and Kevin will make a fundamental video where they go, here's how you increase your credit score. Here's how you calculate the yield on a rental property or something like that. Great video. I'm all about it. But their channels have an audience they have to cater to. When somebody needs to have people come and cash flow is harder to get, and they say cash flow is not the thing, remember the goal and who you're listening to. I see there was a question here from Powell. Howdy. Hey, Dion, when you do a rent rise percentage, do you do a percentage based on your gross rent or profit rent? I hope that makes sense. It does make sense. And it's so let's say if your rent was $2,000 and after all expenses and setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, your expenses are $1,600, you make $400. So if you do a 5% rent increase at $2,000, it's $50. At $400, it's $20. Did I do the math even close? It's all in my head. I have no idea. But I do it off gross rent. And whenever people talk about a percentage rent increase, and then you're listening to the guy who uses the binder strategy, you would seem weird because this is not percentage based. So there's a timeline on when to use the rent, and I actually need to make this video as a separate video. Can't remember if I did it or not. But when I acquire a property, I like to buy it with tenants in place who are generally at a lower rent. That property hasn't been taken care of. Landlord was tired, wanted to get out anyway. So I purchased the property for 2 months. I fix it up, new coated locks, motion sensor LED lights, actually ask the tenant what they would like to be fixed, fix the things that they asked for. It's never been anything big. For 2 months, it gives me a chance to vet the tenant because I didn't get to run their credit score, look at their work history, look at their eviction history. Those 2 months tell me if I want to keep them or not, right? Do they pay on time? Do they call me for trivial things? Do I get noise complaints? Like the things that matter. Those matter to me more than credit score, more than eviction history. They're already in there. I just want to know if they're going to do the things that I'm trying to make sure they'll do by vetting them with my other criteria if I'm picking a tenant. At the 2-month mark, I'll use the binder strategy. This is where the tenant asks me to raise the rent. End of 2021, 2022, I did it on all tenants, and the rent increase was 20% to 28%. The smallest one was 20%, biggest one was 28%. Tenants asked for the rent to go up that much. So at the 2-month mark, I do that. Then generally, here's why this makes sense. And your question is a percentage, and it is a strategy that I use. For most years, when we don't have something like a pandemic and an eviction moratorium and a rent freeze, every other year I would do a 5% increase. So if the rent was $2,000 a month, it would go up $50. 5% every other year, because I don't have rent control in my state. So when 2020 happened and we had a rent freeze and eviction moratorium, and the risk for landlords went up, and we had a delay at the end of 2021, I used the binder strategy again, because now we had this black swan event that increased property taxes, increased insurance costs, increased costs of labor for handyman and contractors. So all of the expenses for owning a rental went up. I did the binder strategy and had that 20 to 28% increase, where generally I was doing 5% every other year. As long as we have the ability to do the binder strategy, when we have that black swan event, I will do 5% every other year. So my metric now is this year, pretty much one tenant had a rent increase. The rents all renewing leases at the same. Next year, they're going to go up 5%. If rent control is proposed or talked about, if Tacoma and Seattle expand their almost rent control laws of, if you do a rent increase and the tenant doesn't like it, you have to pay them 2, 4, or 6 months worth of rent for them to move, then I will do the maximum allowable rent increase every single year. And that rent control like law will make me stupid rich. So that's how I handle the rent increases. Mike, you go through property manager. How do your rent increases work?
My property manager usually asks for a $25 to $50 rent increase a year. And that might not seem like very much. But remember, in Indiana and Gary, most of my stuff was initially renting for $800 or $900, and now it's in the thousands and up to $1,100. We always take it up to market when a tenant moves out. And then if they're going to stay, we're going to take it 25 or $50 up, which is reasonable. And all of my rents are very close to what market value is. So I have no problem with that. Now, in some markets, rents skyrocketed significantly more, like out here in Washington State. I have my one rental here. And when I first bought this thing, so my 5-year anniversary of closing on my house hack duplex is November 28th of this year. Initially, I rented for $1,600 a side. The last time I had a long-term tenant in there, it was at $2,150. And I had that tenant in there that started 2 years ago. So within 3 years, I went from $1,600 to $2,150, which is a $550 increase, which is pretty good. And all I did was just when somebody moved out, I'd raise it. I didn't want turnover, but it just had to be how it ended up. Both tenants that were in there previously got married and moved. But it's important to stay on top of your rent increases. That was Graham Stephan's downfall, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it was his downfall, I think, on 3 units he ended up selling. So he didn't lose all of his rentals, and he still has them, which is impressive because he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And he knows, everyone on YouTube knows, this platform could be gone any day. So if your main source of income is a platform like this, or your channel can just be demonetized.
Mm-hmm. You can tell the truth a little too much.
Right. 5% of $4,000 is $200. If your rent is $2,000, 5%. I don't know. I'm doing it completely wrong. Like I said, the math was wrong in my head, but it's 5% of your gross rent. Then there's a question here from Andy that was reminded of this question. First, I see there was a super chat from BuzzTune, which I appreciate. And then I looked through to see if there was a question I missed from BuzzTune. So let me know if I did that. And then Ninja Vanish, thank you for gifting the membership to Mandy, and all other members. There will be a members only live tomorrow, Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific, where we all jump on Zoom and we look at deals, my deals and your deals. So we want to look at markets, stream of consciousness, how we would look through it. And it's really weird in an email format on Zoom. When we look at a property, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to look at a deal. As an investor, maybe 30 seconds. Only more than 30 seconds if the deal looks good.
Yeah, if I like it.
And a lot don't. So thank you, Ninja Vanish, for gifting that. That was very awesome of you, Mandy. Hope to see you there. And you can watch on YouTube. You don't have to jump in Zoom. Just it's cool. Everybody can jump in Zoom and have these kind of conversations. And I'm trying to do 2 a month. This month, it's going to be tomorrow. It's the first one. And then I saw there was a question from Andy here that I was getting to. Since you buy your properties with tenants in place, do you make your underwriting with their current rent or with market rent? And this is a great question. This is one I don't think I've actually seen before. And I think I've said it clearly in videos without ever saying, here's a video on this topic, which I probably need to do. Underwriting a rental, one of the reasons why it's so much easier for me to find a cash flowing deal on the MLS than it is for many investors is because, and I've seen this 100 posts in Choose FI and on the BiggerPockets forums, of you're bound by the existing leases. So you underwrite your rents at the existing leases, even on a month-to-month tenant. Sure, do that. I don't use market rents either. So the two options that you listed, do you use current rents or market rents, isn't the answer that I use. The binder strategy, historically, every time I've used it, has gotten me within 10% of market rents. I have not had a tenant settle on a rent amount that was lower than 10% of market rents yet. It's possible, but I haven't. So what I do is I look at the area average rents and I study. This takes a couple of weeks. You can't just do a snapshot or look at Rentometer. You have to actually look at rentals, keep track of some for several days to see which ones are listed, go away, come back at a higher amount, or listed for a while and then are reduced to see where they actually belong. So if a property has tenants in place at $1,000 a month and the area average rents are $2,000 a month, I don't use 1,000 and I don't use 2,000. I would use 1,800, 10% less than area average rents. That's where the binder strategy will end up. Now, if there is an existing lease, let's say, and I've had landlords do this, you go to buy a place and they sign a new lease to protect their tenant. So basically you're dealing with a year's lease. So if the rent is 1,000 and the area average is 2,000, but I would get to 18 and 18 made the deal make sense for me. But the tenant is locked in at 1,000 for a year. That's not a deal killer yet. What I then do is technically off of my metric, I'm losing $800 a month from what I would run my numbers at. So 800 times 12, $9,600, if I did the math anywhere close to right, added to the purchase price, what would that do to my yield? Because that's the cost that I'm having of having that extended lower lease. 1 or 2 times that has blown up the deal. That blew up a deal when I bought this place. I was looking at a place, I actually made an offer at 4. They accepted, went under contract, and I saw that they had just extended their leases at lower prices, and it kind of killed the deal for me. So I backed out and I said, no, now that I see your leases, I'll offer $390. They accepted, and then this place accepted, and I ended up backing out of that deal. That deal made sense for me because I self-manage. I tried to pass it on to Frank and Cynthia, and because they use property management, and most people don't realize this, property managers make more than you do on your rentals. So it didn't make sense as a deal for them. I should actually check and see if that deal's there, but I'd probably buy it, and I don't want to buy anymore. So I might not do that. Hopefully, Andy, that answers your question on how I underwrite. I do about 10% under a conservative estimate of area average rents.
I think that is a good example of real estate advice you give someone who is an intermediate or moderate investor versus a brand new investor versus experienced and seasoned. If a brand new investor comes to me and says, oh, rents are below market average, my immediate response is, how do you know? How do you know? Is that what they told you in the listing? Oh, great. Rents can go up $500 a month is what they posted in the listing, or what the real estate agent who's trying to sell you something told you. And what you, trying to make a deal work in your head at a time when deals are hard to get to work, want to believe because you want to believe there's still hope for that deal. If you have multiple units in a market and guaranteed proof of concept that rents should be at a certain dollar amount, then that's a very valid reason to potentially calculate for a different rental amount than what it's currently rented for. But I think hoping for or praying for a rent increase or planning on a rent increase is not something that a brand new investor should really do. I think that it's better if they just look at what the rents actually are. They're brand new. They don't need to take a chance on their first one. They need to get a win on the board out the gate. It's very important to make sure that your first one is a win. It doesn't have to be a grand slam, but we want to get a base hit. We want to get you in the right spot. We don't want you with a negative cash flowing property and a headache. If the rents should be $300, $400, $500 more a month, why aren't they? Why aren't they? Why has the current owner not raised rents? What's wrong with that tenant? What's wrong with the property? What's not being said here? Maybe I'm cynic because I'm a cop and it's my job to look for the hidden motive behind everything. But, oh, cool. Well, fantastic. The lease is up in 3 months. Perfect. Renew it at the newer rate that you said it's worth, and I'll happily buy for the property from you then by closing. No problem. Oh, you're not going to do that? Well, why not? What is the issue here? Now, somebody who's got a few more rentals and some experience in the market, they could withstand the problem of having that rental or that tenant turning out to be difficult, or they may have more market certainty as to where rents should be. But the advice you give somebody who's been doing it for 3 years is different than the advice you give somebody who hasn't bought their first one.
Speaking of somebody who's been doing it for more than 3 years,
Sir
Zuber, howdy. Thanks for hanging out with us during a live stream. We appreciate it.
entered the chat.
Entered the chat. I am doing a video in the morning, which I will be sending to Mike as well, on here's the video. It's a 3-pronged attack on how an investor can beat the affordability index problem. And that will be going on One Rental at a Time channel. Josh asks, where can I purchase membership? So Josh, if you're on an iPhone, because you're a real human, there's a join button. But if you're on an Android, because you like getting kicked off all the dating apps, because nobody wants to talk to green text, this is just what I've heard from a friend, you have to go off the Android device, log on to a laptop where you're looking at YouTube through a browser, and then there's a join button there. And iPhone, Android hate each other. It's all good. That's how you join, Josh. And what we do with the members only is twice a month, we have Zoom calls that are on YouTube and stay on YouTube. So they're there in Futureland as well, where we look at deals. And the reason I do it for members is this is a YouTube channel where you can jump in and you can ask questions. Any question, financial freedom, real estate related, parenting or relationship advice. But unless you want bad advice for both of those. If I said, hey, here's a video, I'm going to open an email from my agent. Let me look at this market. Let me tell you what, and I just went through the mental process of this is what it's like to look at a deal. It would kill my channel because YouTube watches how many people watch your video and stay watching. And then they sent it out to more people. If you start watching a video and you leave because it's super boring and it's just some weird bald guy looking at his emails, it would kill the channel. But the people that are here now who actually want to see, let's look at your deal. Let's look at your market. I don't know your market. I don't know if it's a good or a bad deal, but I can tell you, here's what I would look for. Here's how I would find the information on the things I'm trying to consider. That's what those are for. Let me know if there are any questions I'm missing, Mike. My chat's moved a bunch.
Not seeing any. I think we got most of them.
Well, I think with Zuber stopping by, that is a good note to wrap up on. Oh, there is another question from the name that I have to say when I see it. Thank you for the questions. This is where the content comes from for the live streams. Booger Fart Boy, can you explain how property managers make more than the landlord? Okay. Mike, I'm going to give my answer. Let me know if this is too convoluted, okay? Because this makes sense to me, and I made it in a video one time, and it seemed like the people understood it, but as a teacher, you never know if it's the content you want to share or if it's the content people need to hear. And this is just the way that I look at it. So I ran a school, and it was a truck driving school, and we did like, $9 million in revenue. And so there's a lot of money going through. And people would say, I'm going to use a credit card to pay. And there's a 3% fee that the company pays to use a credit card. Doesn't sound like a lot. It's just 3%. So if you have a $100,000 purchase, let's say the King County Vets program sends through a bunch of students and it costs $100,000 and they use a credit card. It's 3%. What's that? It's $3,000 off of $100,000. Doesn't sound like a lot. They're taking their 3%. Convenience of using a credit card. I totally get it. But that $100,000 pays for the rent on the campuses, keeps the power on, pays the instructors' wages, the L&I insurance, the taxes, the insurance, the truck to be on the road, the trucks to be on there to be on the road, the insurance for the trucks that are on the road. And what's left is about, on a good year, 24% margin of profit, but most years around a 20% margin. So now that 3% fee on the 100,000 becomes 15% of your profit because 3,000 out of 20,000 means you only get 17 grand instead of 20 grand. You lose 15% of your revenue. Take that and apply it to rentals. If your property manager gets 10% and your rent is $2,000, they're going to get $200. You have $2,000 coming in. They only take 200. Seems totally fair. They're the one that has to answer the phone at 10 o'clock when it happens once a year. They're the one that has to sign the new lease. They have to go on Zillow and hit post my rental, which is about as much work as it takes once you've done it once to make that $200 a month. And they're going to upcharge you when they send their handyman out. They're going to upcharge you on the materials that they buy. So they're going to make profit off of you, but we're just going off of their monthly cost of $200. Out of a $2,000 monthly rent payment, you have a mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. You have to set aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. So if there's $400 left out of $2,000, you get $200. The property manager gets $200. They're making exactly the same amount as you. And then they upcharge when they send their handyman out. And then they upcharge when they buy materials. In most cases, unless you have a paid off property without a mortgage, your property manager is going to make more than the owner. Now, in a case where Millennial Mike lives in a high cost of living area and is house hacking because he's smart, but he invests at a distance because he wants to have more transactions, and he's out in another state and he adds a property manager, it's the right call. The property manager, sometimes making more money than Mike, is the right call. He's still getting a return on his money. He's still got a good cash on cash return. He's still generating cash flow, acquiring rentals, getting appreciation and principal pay down and tax benefits. But he's okay with the property manager making more money than he does. I said it here locally because a lot of people say, like Zuber does, he has 187 rentals. He doesn't want to have a second job. And he might self-manage a little in Vegas when he was looking at buying there. And then he had a couple of experiences and recently said, yeah, he's not going to do that because he knows his bandwidth and he knows what he wants to do. For me, with the binder strategy, with the people skills that I have, and with my developed over time backbone that I didn't have the first couple of years as a landlord, I prefer managing my own properties. If you don't have the people skills, which could mean you don't have people skills, or it means you have too big a heart. So you'll let tenants pay late, or you'll not raise the rent, and you'll do things that could hurt your business. Property manager makes sense, even if they do make more money than you do. So I'm not saying property manager is the wrong call. I'm saying understand the true cost, because a percentage of gross is a huge percentage of net. Too convoluted?
No, it makes sense. It's just anytime you do arguments like that, it's always better if you can actually do it on a whiteboard or put numbers up there for people to follow along. That's why I always do that editing in my videos. But you explained it pretty well.
I tried to do the whiteboard one time during a live and then my map broke, so I'm not going to do that today. But maybe do a video with a whiteboard and do, here's how a property manager makes more money than you.
Yeah.
But if money was all that mattered, I'd be the property manager. If they make more money than the owner, right? So it's not always just about the money. You want the freedom. You don't have to go to Gary every time something happens. It's a job. They earn their money. A good property manager does. Awesome. I think we'll probably be wrapping up here pretty soon. Watching from Houston, Texas. Isaac, howdy. I think I almost went to Houston. I have a niece who lives in Houston, and now I have a nephew who lives in San Antonio. So I was almost there last week. Cool. I think we will be wrapping it up there. I do have a video coming up tomorrow afternoon, and how an investor can beat the affordability index problem, a three-pronged attack.
I've got a video coming out today, which is how to get started investing in Gary, Indiana in 2024. But I'm going to ask one final poll and ask you guys to leave comments on the video afterwards. I got a bunch of different videos. I don't know which one to release next. I've got my 5 toxic traits that it takes to become a millionaire, my David Green BiggerPockets Exposed video, or my 10 tips to get cash flow rentals in 2024 video. So whatever one you guys think is valuable, I'll put out on my channel first, because I only do one a week, and they're all just sitting there ready to upload.
Nice. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us on this random Friday live stream. If you want your questions answered like this again in a live stream, Tuesday afternoons, 4 p.m. Pacific, I answer all questions. I do live streams on my phone sometimes, and you can ask questions, but I usually miss them, but I do go watch them later. It's like David Green exposed so far as the winner. I think the toxic traits one you should do as a live stream. Yeah. Give people a chance to chime in and see your reaction.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. I hope the rest of your Friday is a day full of awesome. Until our next video, thanks for coming to our Dion and Mike talk.